Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel Let's Talk Boxing. Let's get deep, let's get technical, and let's break down and predict Joyce versus ZHILEI Zhang. I was calling him ZHILEI Zhang, and then Edward Welsh commented on my last video. Thank you, Edward, for correcting me on the pronunciation. I hope I get this right. You know, I often purposely pronounce things in the way that an English speaker would pronounce them. I'm fluent in Greek, and when I'm going to speak about a Greek name, I do the same thing, because if I start pronouncing it in a Greek accent, it can go over the listener's head. But this one seems quite straightforward. I'm sure everyone's going to understand who we're talking about. So as long as I can remember, I will refer to him as ZHILEI Zhang rather than ZHILEI Zhang. So I apologize to anybody that I might have offended with the poor pronunciation, but we'll get there. By the end of the week, I'll be fluent in Mandarin. Don't worry about it. Now, let's get to this particular fight. I'm really excited about this fight because stylistically, I think there are areas where each guy will feel as though he can capitalize on the weaknesses of the other. And it's not often that you get that when it comes to a heavyweight showdown. Often you'll see one guy that has a particular advantage stylistically speaking. But let's start off with Zhang and talk about some of the areas that I feel that he's very good at and some areas that perhaps can be exposed. First and foremost, he's a very good technical boxer, and he understands distance very well, and his defense is often used predominantly with his legs, and he's got good hand positioning married with that. So one of the things he does, he'll come out in that southpaw stance. And when you are going to throw a punch, you'll often see him bring his hands together. He'll close off that gap. And as he's doing that, he'll take a step back. He understands distance. He understands angles. So although he leaves space around the side because he's brought his gloves in front of him, because he's stepped out of range, you can't land a hook. It's too far for you to land a hook. So as you throw those straight punches, as he's closed up, it leaves very little target to try and get through. Now, you can potentially go to the body, but when you do, he's got a very nice counter shot. Everybody talks about his backhand, his left hand, and it's a very powerful left hand. But he's also got a really nice wide right hook. He neglects the jab. He doesn't really jab much at all. But what he tends to do is engage the lead hand with his own hand. In the technical breakdown that I did of the top rank card that I did the other night, that I covered the other night, I spoke about how Shakur Stevenson often uses his lead hand to parry the opponent's hand, to engage it, to keep it busy. And he uses it as a radar. And when you bypass that, he knows you're coming into his space, and he will then react to what you're doing to maintain range. ZHILEI Zhang does something similar. He's of course not as light on his feet as Shakur you wouldn't expect him to be, right? He's a much bigger man and so on and so forth. But the method of operation is quite similar. The difference is Shakur will also pump out a powerful jab. Zhang doesn't really do that. It's there, it's in his arsenal, but he doesn't throw many jabs at all over the course of a fight. It really is about engaging that lead hand, taking away the jab of the opponent. When you get too comfortable, he will hook a right hook around the guard, or if you try to step to him, as he's stepping back, he'll throw a hook. A little Dimitri Bivol type of move there. Although Bivol tends to do it at the end of a combination, Zhang does it more to protect himself as you're trying to enter. And he will understand the angles, like I said, and he'll bring that left hand, that backhand into play, and it's a very powerful shot. And the power can be delivered long or short. Sometimes when you've got a guy that's got a lot of long power, in other words, when they deliver the power, the real impact doesn't occur until he's fully extended his arm. You can smother that power. So as he cocks to throw the shot, you can actually come inside and lean into the shot before he fully extends, and you won't feel the full force of his power. However, with ZHILEI Zhang, when you step back, if he catches you at the end of it, it's still a big forceful shot. And if you come in and he catches you with a short shot, again, it's still a big forceful shot. And one of the things he has, although he's not the fastest fighter in the world, his timing is superb. So if you see the Jerry Forrest fight, for instance, and Forrest does have some fast hands for a heavyweight, you'll see that there are moments where Forrest does try to throw those wide left hooks, trying to come around that guard of Zhang. And you can see as he's closed up, he'll just drop a very short left hand. It's very short, and he drops him with it. And he's very, very good at doing that. His timing's very good. There's a lot to work with when it comes to ZHILEI Zhang in terms of skill. He's a skillful guy. He is, however, a little bit limited with his head movement. His defense is predominantly hand positioning, which is very good, and his feet, which is also very good. The problem that he has is that he has some stamina issues. And after 4 rounds, a lot of people say after 6, 7, the truth is after 4 rounds, he starts to fall off a cliff. His output in terms of efficiency drops massively. And one of the reasons he becomes a lot less efficient is not just to do with volume, it's to do with the fact that he becomes less evasive because he's not backing out as quickly. So he becomes an easier target to find. Now he's a more stationary target and his hand positioning is still very good. He'll block and try and keep safe in that way. But because he's not stepping back as quickly, he's not as good with the distance control when he's tired, you will find a home as the fight progresses. He dropped Forrest 3 times in rounds 1, 2 and 3, one in each round. And he was going swimmingly, and you're looking at this and you're thinking Forrest is out of there before you know it. And although Jared Anderson got Forrest out in 2 rounds, Jared Anderson got lit up a little bit in that first round. He was getting caught with a lot. If you just look at those first 3 rounds, although Anderson got him out in 2 and he survived the 3rd round, say, if they were just 3-round fights, as an overall performance, you'd have said Zhang's performance was better than Jared Anderson's. But after that, he goes off to fall off a cliff. I thought he won round 4 as well. It ended up being a draw, about right. Maybe Zhang could have just about done enough, but either way, it was a very close fight. Had it been a 12-round fight instead of a 10-round fight, he would have been stopped. Now, in fairness to him, he is said to have had anemia in that fight. He had some kidney issues in that fight, had to do with the consumption of water, apparently, that he was just not getting enough of it, and he was dehydrated and so on and so forth. But this is not a case of an individual isolated anomaly. Because even against Filip Hrgović, a fight that I actually felt Hrgović won, you saw that he started well and then he fell off a cliff again. Early on, he was doing really well. He was landing some big shots. Hrgović was more active. The knockdown, for me, was not a knockdown. It was a cupping shot around the back of the head. It should not have counted. And so if you eradicate that, Hrgović definitely won the fight, in my opinion, because he was winning that first round. So he would have had a 10-9 and instead it goes 10-8 to Zhang. But if you ignore that and you score it as it was scored, as the judges would have had to have scored it, I felt that Hrgović won the fight 7-5, but because of the knockdown, he ultimately only won the fight by a single point. So it was a very close fight, and there were numerous swing rounds in there that could have gone either way. But one of the things that you have to understand when it came to Zhang in that fight is that Hrgović was able to be a lot more active than him, because in the latter half of the fight, you saw that although there were sporadic moments where he's still landing some nice varied shots, the backhand, the right hook around the guard, but also the uppercut up close. He's got a really nice uppercut when you're right up close to him. He finds a gap for it, and it's naturally heavy-handed, like I said. Despite that, it was far too sporadic, and Hrgović had, of course, a very disrupted camp. He lost his father, he had a new coach in Ronnie Shields. All of these things are certainly not ideal for such a big fight, a final eliminator before you get your chance at Alexander Usyk. And he looked cumbersome. I mean, I've been a little bit critical sometimes of Hrgović when he was really highly rated, when he was considered the boogeyman of the division. But now people have gone too far the other way and they're referring to him almost as the useless man of the division. And it's far too great a swing, to be honest with you, in the way people are observing him. Far too reactive the fans are. Having said that, he was there for the taking on that night, and Zhang couldn't close the show. And that's a real problem for him. Now, when he comes up against Joyce, Joe has a fantastic jab, but although it's a very consistent, thudding jab, because Zhang is able to engage that lead hand so effectively, and he does have a stellar amateur career. Let's not forget, they're both Olympic silver medalists. Zhang from 2008, Joyce from 2016. If he's able to take that jab away from Joyce, it becomes a much more interesting affair, because Joyce's power shots are slow. His jab is not, but his power shots are slow. You have to understand, this is a man who had a bone scan, and they found that he was 5 times more dense in his bones than the average man. I mean, that is unbelievable. But to consider what that means, think how heavy his skeleton is. No matter how big and muscular he is, you're talking about a big mechanical engine that you're having to move. It's not going to be sharp, fast punches. And so as he tries to bring in these big power shots, Zhang is the sort of guy who has that timing, even against faster-handed guys like Hrgović and Jerry Forrest, who he can line you up with shots. So what Joyce is going to have to do is use his feet, which are very good. He has got fast feet, and also his agility. This is something that goes really under the radar of Joyce. He's a very agile man. This is a guy that is a unit, and he does flips in the ring and stuff. Remember that. And if you look at the fight against Daniel Dubois, for instance, you'll start to see that as the fight started to wear on towards the middle rounds, there were moments where he'd be jabbing Dubois, and then as he's pulling out, waiting for that counter, he's leaning all the way off to the side. He's almost horizontal, and he's just hiding behind that shoulder, and he's taking away the attempted counter from Dubois. Now, when Joyce is doing that, as he's jabbing, he's aware he's going to do that. So he's not reacting to something. It's almost premeditated. He's going to have to employ that early on. Be mobile, use some upper body movement, use that agility to try and stay away from what Zhang's going to offer, because I do believe he will struggle to maintain a tempo past 4, 5, 6 rounds. However, the problem that Joyce does have is that he doesn't have the fastest reflexes, and we've spoken about not having necessarily the fastest hands, and he does get caught. And if you are talking about a guy who could potentially crack a hole in the tank that is Joyce, then it is ZHILEI ZHANG. But one of the other weaknesses that Zhang's got is that when he hurts a guy and he drops him, notice that when they get back up, he gets back into that boxing stance and he starts to box again. Perhaps it's a fear of the engine. Perhaps he's just got quite a monotonous speed to him. But he doesn't ever jump on an opponent. He doesn't say, right, he's hurt, I'm going to go for it now, I'm going to start unloading. He doesn't do that. He gets back behind a controlled stance and then he tries to box. In other words, what he's looking to do really is either break you down meticulously, where he's busting you up till you can't stand anymore and then he takes you out, or he seeks to take you out with a singular attack, whether it's a 1-2 or an individual shot, but basically he's seeking to knock you spark out. He's not a guy that will hurt you, stun you and then jump on you. That's not really his game. So Joyce will have moments where he's going to be given the opportunity to recuperate. And if you watch the Hrgovic fight, for instance, there were moments where Hrgovic is looking down at the canvas and going for a walk. And there are moments where you want Zhang to jump on him. He clearly wants a break and he's not capable of doing that. So does Zhang have enough to take Joyce out with a single shot? What I think can potentially happen here is that early on, before Joyce starts to anticipate the angles and starts to make defensive moves prior to the attacks coming from Zhang, before Zhang starts to tire, Joyce is going to want to engage that lead hand as well. And I believe he's going to start walking onto some backhands. And I also think he'll start getting caught with some hooks around that lead hand. I think Zhang's going to look very good early on. And I would not be surprised if he hurts Joyce early in this fight. I know Joyce has got this seemingly indestructible skeleton about him. He's a human being. And if he's stunned by a shot he doesn't see coming, Zhang is very heavy-handed. I believe he's the heaviest puncher Joyce has been in the ring with. You could argue Daniel Dubois as well, but with Daniel Dubois, I think it's a little bit different. A lot of it has to do with sort of an explosive speed. Dubois is underrated in his speed. The Talma spoke about this in a recent interview, for instance. Whereas with Zhang, it's more sneaky. It's almost as though he'll lull you into a full sense of security in terms of your positioning in the ring, and he'll land a short shot. It's a shot you might not see coming. And being stunned by that can put you on your backside. And I've got a feeling that Joyce could get into a little bit of trouble here early on, because Zhang also goes to the body very well. Now, if he does get out of those early rounds, Joe, I believe he will start to break down Zhang. Zhang's movement will start to be affected. I think he will be overwhelmed. And that's what I meant earlier when I was saying how they've got weaknesses that the other guy will feel he can exploit. Zhang will look at Joyce and he'll say to himself, he's a slow starter. His hands aren't that fast. His feet are fast, but so are mine early on. And I'm going to find the angles and I'm going to line him up and I am going to land punches. And I'm not, say, Carlos Takam, for instance. I'm not whoever else he's fought, Joseph Parker. I know I can put a hole in this guy's head. I'm not Christian Hammer. I can take this guy out. That's how he's going to look at this. Whereas Joyce is going to look at this and say, if there's one thing you do not want when you're facing me, it's a poor engine, because I'm a snowball fighter. I start off as a little snowball and you start rolling me down the hill and I start collecting more and more snow. And by the time I get to the bottom of that hill, I'm an avalanche and I'm going to bury you. And so both of these guys are going to look at this and fancy their chances. So how do I think the fight will go? I think Zhang has a real chance in the first 4 rounds, even though that's not a popular thing to say and the bookies would tell you that's a ludicrous statement. I do think he's going to be a danger to Joyce in the first 4 rounds. However, much more likely, Joyce will get out of those early stages. He might be cracked with a few big shots, and then you're going to see Joyce do what he does best. You see, what Joyce is very good at doing as well with Ismail Salah, something I haven't mentioned, is he's very, very good at being economical with the probability of the shots that land. In other words, because he's quite slow with his hands, imagine I'm going to throw a right hook and I'm going to release the right hook from 3 p.m. and it's going to come to 9 p.m. say. You can come under that particular shot. You can roll under it. What Joyce will do, for argument's sake, is either shoot it shorter if he's going to go through that trajectory, so there's no coil on it, you don't see it coming as much, or alternatively he'll angle it in a way whereby there's more chance of it hitting somewhere on your body. Remember that hook that Golovkin used to throw where he'd come almost over. So if it starts at 3 p.m, it goes up towards 2 p.m, and then almost ends at 9 p.m, but it goes forward. It's like a 3D clock. So what happens when that trajectory of shot comes? It's harder to duck underneath. You can pull back from it, but because it's coming from this trajectory, if I pull back, it can hit me in the collarbone, it can hit me in the chest. If I pull to the side, it will hit me on the shoulders. Somewhere it will land. And so he's been very economical at doing that. In the Daniel Dubois fight, he was actually the opposite of that. His right hooking, was actually quite wayward, and Dubois was able to move away from it quite consistently. The majority of the damage that Joyce did in that fight was with the jab. Since linking up with Ismail Salas, working on certain things, he's become a lot more efficient. And so I'm not sure that Zhang's going to be able to avoid that onslaught as the fight wears on. It's not just a case of I'm going to take away his jab and then he's going to have a slow power shot. I'll be able to evade that too. Early on that might be the case, but once Joyce gets the reading of him, I think he'll start breaking him down. And I think Joyce should get him out of there between rounds 8 and 12. But in the first 4 rounds, I believe he's going to be at a great threat as well. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. I'm also going to upload another video where we're discussing Anthony Joshua and the heavyweight scene as a whole. That will be up around 5 p.m. tomorrow. I'm going to film it now, but it'll be up around 5 p.m. tomorrow. That way you guys can check this video out now. You can check it out on your way to work, and then later on your way back from work for the UK viewers, you've got something to help the journey go easier too. Thanks for watching, everyone. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.